It wasn't pretty. In fact, it was pretty ugly. Michigan ends up barely defeating Purdue. We're going to get into the game and why you probably shouldn't be taking this and extrapolating it and putting it across the rest of the season. Let's get to that right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you for making us your first listen, and thank you to all of you who are everydayers. I got that backwards. It's Monday. I'm very confused. I'm in a confused state on Mondays. It's always the case. Anyway, so we're going to do the typical Monday after the game kind of look back but we're going to kind of maybe do it a little bit differently. We'll do the overall idea of the game. Actually, let me change that up compared to how I planned it. We're going to do the offense, defense, and all of that in one segment. Then we're going to do the overall implications of the game and just overarching view. And then we will get to the where Michigan goes from here. That should work. Okay. So, I mean, it wasn't all bad. I know there's going to be a lot of people here that just get really angry with me. People get really angry with me when I tell you what I think about anything. And they say, oh, he's got to get, the program's got to, like, I don't care. Listen, like, I have plenty of rows with the program from time to time. Whether you believe so or not, that's true. But this is just how I see it. Number one, it wasn't all bad. Was it good? No, wasn't good. I'm not making excuses for the program at all and the state of things. But Jordan Marshall, 25 runs for 185 yards. They got 39 carries for 253 yards after you account for the sacks and the kneel downs. So there is that part. That part's good. And honestly, that's kind of how Michigan has tended to win generally anyway. Bryce Underwood had his worst game by far. Now, I know that some of you will look at it and say the Michigan State game was his worst game. No, this one was by far worse. He was completely rattled. He was completely off. Like, he had happy feet against MSU, but like, eventually he, like, if it's believed that he had RPOs against Michigan State to some degree, and also the truth of the matter was that against Michigan State, they didn't need to throw the ball, and you just kind of wanted to bleed the clock, get out of there type of thing. That's true. Like, I had some people get really, really mad at me last week and being like, no, they can't throw. And it's like, no, there's a difference between can't and refuse to, right? Penn State, Washington, whether it's 2023 Penn State, 2021 Washington, there have been times that Michigan said, maybe we're going to have some problems throwing, but we're just not even going to, right? That there's a difference between that and not being able to. Bryce, with a sub 60% in this case, had plenty of opportunities and he just failed. And that's, I guess, like, maybe not on this show, just kind of based off of not just Connor, but like other people who have known and seen Bryce. Some people inside the building and all of that stuff have told me about Bryce and said, like, man, like what he said, no one's seen a freshman like me. That's true. I've heard it countless times, but he had a freshman game. I wouldn't necessarily say that Michigan State was a freshman game. It was maybe a freshman in a rivalry game, but it wasn't like a typical freshman game. But Michigan also looked at it and said, man, we're running at like 7 yards a clip. We're not going to need to do that. Now, they did the same kind of thing this game, right? They averaged 6.5 yards per game. The big difference, first and foremost, were the mistakes. Bryce had 2 turnovers in the red zone. This game looks completely different if he doesn't have either of those. Donovan McCulley wide open on the try to force throw into Andrew Marsh. Not great. The fumble as he's running, also not great. That's his, I think, second fumble loss of the season and his third interception on the year. I mean, all in all, decent turnover numbers when you consider he's played 9 games, first year of college football. But this game got out of hand quickly in a bad way. Gave Purdue a lot of momentum. Was very bizarre. A lot of the Purdue antics that were happening kind of late in the game between the third and the fourth quarter. I mean, there were Purdue play. I have some video. It doesn't really show it because by the time you get switch the camera from photo to video, you stop, you start trying to record. Only caught the tail end, but just like Purdue players going up over to the Michigan fans and trying to antagonize them after the game. Some of these Purdue players that were kind of Jack Sawyering, and a couple Michigan players had to be held back. Credit to Grant Newsom for making sure that happened. But they were definitely out there being like, you're going to get throttled by Ohio State. And like, okay, great. 2-7 team says what? But I mean, offensively, you had one good thing, and that's the run game. Really good, which honestly, considering like what were we talking about in the very, very early season? Run game looked good, but it was all home runs, right? Like, it wasn't like Michigan went and ran all over Oklahoma. It was that the home run, New Mexico, the home runs from Justice Haynes. And Jordan Marshall wasn't really able to get going, and now he's just going nuts. So that's huge for Michigan to be in this spot, because this is not where they were at the beginning of the year. The run blocking is excellent. You can see that they're figuring that out. The pass protection, it's not as bad as it was per se, but it still needs work. Bryce clearly is uncomfortable, and he's not doing the things he needs to do, set his feet and making those throws. He's just kind of all willy-nilly right now. So he needs to settle down. The bye week comes at a really good time. Defensively, I mean, I know I had this conversation with a few people on the sidelines, and they were surprised that the Purdue offense was able to drive the field against the Michigan defense. I was not surprised at all. This is kind of what Purdue's done. Might not be ranked as high statistically. I think the big thing that was confusing to me more so was that they were able to run the ball as well as they were. They had 165 yards before the sacks and all of that, so 138 total yards. That's kind of surprising to me that they were able to do that. But as far as like the pass game working the way it did for Purdue, I mean, they'd been able to run the ball in some of these games. I think I mentioned that in the preview episode. That was still a little surprising to me and a little bit jarring. That to me is a little bit jarring. But ultimately, I think that they did an okay job. The defense, especially considering it was pretty clear that Michigan was like, we're going to win this game regardless. And I understand the injuries are piling up like a crazy, crazy train here. Michigan was pretty early on, like we're throwing out, like I think it was early second half. So the game was, it was weird because it was both never in doubt in my eyes. Like there was never a point in which I felt Purdue was going to actually take the lead or win the game. But at the same time, it was close, right? I mean, it was within striking distance for Purdue the entire game. And yet, Michigan's got both Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng and Chase Taylor out there at the same time, amongst other guys who are out there. So it's to me like that was, I understand they don't have as many numbers, and Jayshon Barham got hurt in this one. But I mean, you still could just say like, we're just going to have to roll Ernest and Troy Bowles. You're just going to have to roll this whole game. That's just what it's going to be. And they didn't do that. Like they ended up bringing in still going rotation, bringing in Lugard Adakpai. And, we saw a lot of Dominic Nichols, who hasn't really seen the field that much in this game. So like, to me, like that was kind of the interesting part defensively, is that they were really rotating guys, which again, like Connor talked about last week about season situations. And that's part of the season situation. If you feel like you can get out of there, and I know you want me to just get angry and everything, and like, listen, I'm not going to tell you that it's not bad, but I'm not going to spend this entire time with you talking about how bad it is. That's counterproductive. We want to talk about kind of some of the other tertiary things and then like move forward, right? Like that's, if you want to go to the doom and gloom show, there's plenty of them out there. And again, not saying that this last week was good, but we got plenty of other things to talk about here. And I think though if you're talking season situation, Michigan's in kind of a good spot because, if you are in with an injury riddled scenario like they are now, and you're playing against Ohio State, and then you have to suddenly be like, hey, Nathaniel Wosu-Boateng, your number's up right now, right? You're not going to be thrown to the wolves kind of like Jaden Sanders was against Oklahoma. Now it's like, okay, they know what it looks like. That's a good thing. Purdue and Ohio State aren't the same, but, you don't want your first real, like, hey, you're playing meaningful football against Ohio State. You don't want that. You want at least to be playing meaningful football against a Big Ten team not named Ohio State before that. So I think that those are some of the good things. Defensively, again, they did fine. Derrick Moore is an absolute beast. He's at like 8.5 sacks with 3 games left in the regular season. Someone else mentioned this. I think it was Anthony Broom. Said, like, we need to keep an eye on Aidan's record. He had 14, I believe, right? I think over the course of everything. I know he broke the 11 in the Ohio State game. And then Ojabo also hit the 11. So I think you're at this spot here where if you're Michigan, you could see Derrick Moore get there. He's just been coming on so strong. He's been phenomenal. All right. So why do I say that this isn't like this is we'll get into the part that people don't like. You probably didn't. If you didn't like the first segment, you're not going to like the second. Let me just put it that way. But I've got I want to talk more season, like not season situation, but why I don't necessarily feel the same way a lot of other people feel about this game in particular. Let's get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, college football is back. I also want to add college basketball is back, like today, literally today. Couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best price with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. That's very true. So I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw you can get into Chrysler Center tonight for the Michigan basketball season opener against Oakland for $7. That's it. You can get some incredible seats for like $30, $40. Really incredible seats for like $50, $60. So there you go. App makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before you buy. And I love the zone deals, too. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football and basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, this promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tip. Wow. Okay, there we go. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Now that I got all this new camera gear, so I did my first vlog, the Peter McKinnon style. I did it really short, it was 2 minutes. I'm just going to start doing those over on my personal YouTube. My personal YouTube is going to stop being as much like Michigan football press conference stuff. Like no one's watching that anyway. There's other places you can get all that. So I we'll still have Michigan stuff there. I got to still record a talking head like you see here on this is a talking head, this podcast, but I shot some stuff behind the scenes from the Michigan Purdue game and showing you what a day in the life is for me. I aired in some ways, but we got to still put that together. That we probably won't get that together in the next day or two, but maybe like Wednesday, Thursday. But yesterday I did go out and just basically film myself going to dinner. I know it was pretty basic, but it was just like, I want to try this burger that I just saw online that looks incredible. So you're going to get a lot more just kind of different content over there, just kind of behind the scenes type of things. So check that out. Took me 2 minutes to say that. Shouldn't have. But, we can go with over 30 with the camera now. It records longer. Now that I understand that a blinking red light means that the camera stopped recording. I didn't know that on Friday. Now I know that. But, okay. I am not as concerned as others are. Now, let me be absolutely clear, because there's going to be people that say, Isaiah thinks everything's great. Like, I understand I just clearly think about a lot of these games differently than others do. But I also think more kind of in line with how the coaches do. And I can tell when I usually match up my opinions with like Connor Stallions, they tend to be pretty close. He might be a little bit more technical or a lot more technical. But we seem to have the same ideas of what's going on, what the trajectory of the team is, and all that kind of stuff. So with this one, against Purdue, yeah, it was bad. I just want to make it very clear for the people who don't want me to say anything nice, that I'm making it very clear it was a disastrous game. But you'd rather have a disastrous game with a win than a disastrous game with a loss. And honestly, one of the things that I think can be good for this team, especially in moments like these, is to figure out like things that aren't working against teams like Purdue rather than discover it against Ohio State, like, say, I don't know, 2018, the version of the game, when suddenly it was like, I mean, yes, against Indiana, they had some problems with some crossing routes. I believe even against Rutgers that year they did. But, they were still head and shoulders better than both of those teams. And then suddenly, like, they hadn't fixed the glitch. I like using that Office Space quote. And then they get to Ohio State, and Ohio State's just like, all right, we're just going to run roughshod all over you. That good luck. So you'd rather have a day where Bryce is not playing that great happen against Purdue or against Michigan State? Because here's the thing. We've seen him play well. This is the first time at home he hasn't played well, but we've seen him play well. He played great against Washington. That was probably his best game. He played very good at every home game, essentially, before this one. The road games were kind of like he had his moments here and there, like moments against Nebraska, against the number one pass defense, still really good pass defense. They just absolutely, they lost the game, but they kept Jaden Maava completely in check. Like, Nebraska is still a very legit pass defense. Like, Bryce played okay. It wasn't like anything to write home about, but like played okay. They ran the ball fine, all of that stuff. So you'd rather have moments like that against a Purdue team, much like we brought up last week, 2021 Rutgers. Like, you'd rather have those types of moments. 2015 Minnesota. I know that team wasn't really much of anything, but like, have those games. Like, the Michigan has those games. They're not Ohio State. They're not out there trying to score 70 on everybody. They're just trying to win the game. And I think there was evidence that you could see in this one that Michigan felt pretty good that it was going to win the game, even when it was only, only up, 14-7. It felt like it was in a good spot, right? For the most part. So I think there's that. But the big thing here that I really want to make sure that I'm clear on, that the way I don't look at games compared to, I think, a lot of other people, I don't look at every game as a stepping stone for Ohio State. I don't. Because we've seen, and like, you should be conditioned enough to see that Michigan can have a really bad game against Purdue and then play well enough to beat Ohio State. We've seen it. We've seen it. Like, if you took the worst performance of each of the last 4 years, you'd look at it and say, yeah, they're not going to beat Ohio State playing like that. But then against Ohio State, they haven't played like that. Heck, they didn't even play incredible against Ohio State last year. Defensively, they did, but offensively, it was just like, okay. They scored 13 total points. 3 points in the second quarter, right? Like, that wasn't like an incredible performance. So yes, if they play the way they played against Purdue, against any of the remaining three teams, they will lose all three of those games. But I don't look at the Purdue game and say, like, okay, like, this isn't like a plot graph where you're like, okay, this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. That's just not how it works. Each game is its own vignette of the season. Like, yes, a team can use one game to catapult to the next and catapult to the next, or use one game to get lower and lower and lower. And that can happen. I think the bye week comes at a really good time for Michigan to kind of regroup. But like, generally, especially this Michigan team, like, in the last 5 years, you've seen, like, I brought up a lot last week, 2021. There weren't a lot of games on that schedule that it was like, man, they just absolutely wiped the floor with them between like the first three games and the Ohio State game. Like, and yet they beat Ohio State and went to the Big Ten championship. And then like beating Iowa the way they did was kind of actually weirdly an anomaly that year, because they were not beating teams like that. They were, they won 29-7 against Indiana the same week as this Purdue game was. after losing to Michigan State. They won like, I don't remember the score, like 30-7 or something like that against Northwestern. But like, then those are fine. Like those aren't blowouts, but they're comfortable wins the way I look at it. But it's not like they were, just clowning everybody on the way to that Ohio State game. Is really like Maryland, then Ohio State, and then Iowa. They really had those ones. Otherwise, like the rest of the Big Ten games, for the most part, were just like comfortable wins, close wins, walk-off win against a middling Penn State team in Happy Valley. Okay. So I'm not as concerned as a lot of you, because I don't look at things as like, this game leads to the next game, leads to the next game. And a lot of ways, especially with a young team, you just need to take the game situation for what it is. That's how I look at it. It's not making excuses. It's just how I look at it. Like, I don't think that this Purdue game negatively affects Michigan's opportunity against Ohio State. If anything, I think it positively affects it if the coaches and players are smart, which I think that they are. Now, does that mean Michigan is going to beat Ohio State? I mean, right this second, I would say no. All right, this second, I would say no. But at the same time, like, I would have said that in 2021. I would have said that in, coming out of the Michigan State loss. Actually, I didn't, because Jake Butt can attest to this. I said that I thought after the Michigan State loss that they were going to beat Ohio State. I said it to Jake Butt. You can ask him. And they didn't lose in 2022 or 2023, but they've had close games. But there have been moments, certainly there was no one that thought going into the game last year that Michigan was going to win. So that's kind of how I come to it. It's not sunshine blowing. I know a lot of you are going to look at it that way because you want to commiserate with me, or let me put it the other way. You want me to commiserate with you, and that's just not going to happen. But that's just how I see it. All right, so where does Michigan go from here? What's next? Let's get to it here in just a moment. But before we do, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you could even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every single game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I haven't really talked to, I had a little, was part of a group chat with Connor and Steve Dace and Joe Simon, and I think just Joe Simon. I'm assuming it was. Maybe it wasn't. I don't have the number. I just realized it could have been anybody because I was added to the group chat. But like Connor was kind of laying out some of the thoughts that are relatively similar to what I just said. But I guarantee on Thursday when we have him on, he's going to have some very similar types of responses to what I'm saying here. And y'all can get mad. I don't really understand that mentality. I'm just telling you what I think. Am I wrong? Maybe. I might be. But I've tended to be more right on these things than not. But here's the thing. The coaches have to recognize the problems, and they have to fix the problems, and then the players have to execute. And with a team that's as young as this Michigan team is, especially on offense and increasingly on defense, then that poses some issues. Here's one of the places I've found some issues is the intermittence of the defensive front in being able to stop the run game. Normally it used to be 3rd and 2 was not an obvious, like the team's going to be able to run for that first down. Now, Michigan has occasionally stopped teams. I think they did as well with Purdue. But generally, I feel like teams can get 2-3 yards, not easily, but they're able to get it. That to me is like a little bit concerning. Now, maybe less against Ohio State because even though they had a decent running day against Penn State, like generally that's not been their bread and butter. I kind of feel like going into the game, Ohio State is kind of more of what you have seen is what you are going to get. Whereas Michigan might be a little bit more dynamic, holding things back, or at least, styles make fights. That's another reason why I don't look at like Michigan versus Purdue and say like, oh, this is a harbinger of doom. This isn't going to work out. I look at it more as Okay, well, styles make fights. We've seen that in the game every year, right? Like, Michigan's style of play is not boded well for Ohio State. Now, Ohio State is slowly becoming more Michigan-like the more Michigan beats them, right? Stronger offensive line play, but they're still a very pass-happy team. And I still think that Penn State didn't run all over them, but they were able to for a little while before they had to go pretty much straight pass because they were down. I think that Michigan should be in a good situation if it's healthy enough, right? Like, we haven't talked about Justice Haynes reportedly having surgery, but with hopes he can come back. I don't know what that means. How ready he'll be able to go. Still kind of surprising, kind of given seeing him like big happy smile after the Michigan State win, but like broken foot. As someone who currently has broken fingers, or a broken hand rather, a broken knuckle, I'm as if I don't know what's actually broken. It feels like my index finger is broken, but it's not. But like, it has a certain feel that's not very comfortable, right? It doesn't feel good at all. And I was certainly not really smiling in the immediate aftermath of said fracture. I have some days still where I'm not smiling, but that kind of surprising to me that it's whatever he's had, this foot injury that it requires surgery, but having surgery, maybe that means he can come back. If not, when would Michigan ever have a backup running back that could do well against Ohio State? Especially one that really seems to have a disdain for Ohio State for personal reasons. Never seen that happen. But styles make fights, number one. But everything I said before last week, still true. Now, I guess one of the videos, honestly, was the most important video of last week, and it didn't upload. You can listen to it. It was my Wednesday episode. You can listen to it, but it didn't upload to YouTube. Like, it apparently aired out and I didn't see it, and I deleted the video draft. So, but we kind of touched on it on Friday. The idea of you go from, you hoped that you could get some offensive things working against Purdue, but more it was about the defense. But it's more about getting the offense. Here's the thing. The offense failing to move the ball through the air well against Purdue, whatever. I mean, Purdue not been good, just like Michigan State not been good. And I understand that's why a lot of you are upset. Hey, that's a bad defensive team and we weren't able to do it. I would rather they do what they did, and then let's say they have a really good offensive game plan and they execute well against Northwestern, who's actually a very good defensive team. That's what I would rather have, by far. Let me see if we can pull this up real quick. We haven't done any due diligence just yet, but Northwestern is right behind Michigan in total defense, 19th in the country. In terms of teams that Michigan has faced from a defensive standpoint, Nebraska and Oklahoma are ranked higher, but at 9th and 13th respectively. So this is the third hardest defense that Michigan will have faced this year to this point. So there's that. Pass defense wise, I mean, Nebraska's number 2 in the country. Ohio State is number 3. Northwestern is 13th. So again, I would rather, if I'm Michigan, I want to figure some things out to be able to move the ball in this game. Right? Like, to me, this last game was more about, can the defense stall out Purdue? And they did. I mean, I know Northwestern blanked them, but to give up 16 points against Purdue, I'm absolutely fine with that personally. And then, because I mean, their offense has shown that it can be explosive, and they still only got 300 something yards, if that. I got to press the back button because I X'd out of the other screen. So total yards here, 276. Great. You shouldn't have that problem next week against Northwestern, but then the next week against Maryland, you're probably going to have to, you're going to have some work to do on both sides of the ball. It's stepping stones. That's the only way you see the trajectory, because styles make fights. You have each game is its own thing, but you gain a little confidence if you're able to move the ball against Northwestern, then you're just like, okay, that was a pretty tough defense and we were able to move the ball. Sweet. I'm going to keep that in my mind for the next time. I think that that's important. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back tomorrow with the mailbag, I think. Are we going to demur from the mailbag with it being a bye week? No, maybe we'll do a mailbag this week and none next week. I think that's maybe a way to go. Or the other way around. We'll figure it out. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.